This interview is the 23rd in a series focusing on vendors who are selling their wares at the Western New York Welcome Center's Taste New York Market. In this vendor spotlight, Kristin Nelson, owner-operator of the Ardent Homesteader, shares the story of the Ardent Homesteader and its line of small-batch, handcrafted, dangerously dark, salted caramel sauce branded as Cara-Sel, along with some business and marketing experiences, tips, and strategies. Spotlight on the Ardent Homesteader.
I took some time off when my two youngest children, were small, staying home to raise them. And in that time, I really enjoyed having a lot of fun in the kitchen, really being more experimental, cooking dinners and all sorts of things. And at that time, I developed a recipe for caramel sauce that I would sort of use as gifts. And, it got to a point where people would request it and ask for it and say, wow, you should sell it. And it just, I was busy with the kids and everything, and it just didn't occur to me to actually act on it. And then when my youngest was going, approaching kindergarten age, and, people kept saying, you should really sell it. And I thought, you know what, if I'm ever going to do it, now is the time. So I did try to figure it out, and here I am.
And where is the Ardent Homesteader located?
We are in Ardent, New York, which is in southern Orange County. So, everyone says upstate New York, but if you look at the state, we're pretty far down. We're only about an hour north of the city.
And who's involved in the operation? You're the owner operator, right?
I am. I'm also the maker, the marketer, all of the things. I am technically my one and only employee, but it really takes a village. I mean, I have a sister that loves to help me edit, copy. She's a great grammarian. My husband is, I couldn't do it without him. The kids have even helped me at markets. But as far as official employees, it's just me. And you're a certified women-owned business? Is that correct? I am not certified. The process was really extensive, and I ended up just not being certified, but I am unofficially a woman. You chose not to go through the full certification, so you don't label it that way, but you exactly, are. Exactly. How do you say your version of the product? That's a very, very good way to say it. Yes, I do say caramel, but I wouldn't correct someone that said caramel. It's, tomato, tomato. But yes, I do say caramel. And you actually give your product a specific name as well. I do, yes. It is called Cara-Sel, salted caramel sauce. And luckily I'm related to smart people. My mother-in-law actually helped me name it. It is sort of a play on caramel and the French word for salt. So Cara-Sel. Is it trademarked? It is. And that's important if you want to protect it. It is. Absolutely. I trademarked the product name and also my business name. What makes your product unique compared with the hundreds of other caramel sauces around the world? Yes, that's a really good question. And it's funny, sometimes, I would struggle to figure out how to fully explain it. And it's because honestly, it's a number of things, to just say, oh, it's really, really, it's just tastier. That's not enough to explain. I do take my sugar a lot further, meaning darker than a lot of other caramels. So it's a dry caramel. There's no water added. So when I cook the sugar, it goes well beyond the color of copper, like almost burnt, but not, just shy of that. And it really adds a bittersweet complexity, which, helps tamp down the sweetness and just rounds it out. Then the dairy really just makes it a full, rich flavor. And I do cook it further in that it's thicker than a lot of caramel sauces out there. In fact, I recently even considered dropping the word sauce from the description because it can be used as a sauce, but it's really sort of beyond that. It's, you can use it as an ingredient. Yeah, it's almost fudgy at room temperature this time of year, which is April. In the summer, when it's warmer, it's, it's a bit more pourable from the get-go, but it is. It's you. I mean, honestly, a lot of people just eat it with a spoon.
I'm sure that's true. And as it turns out, we're visiting on National Caramel Day. Is that correct?
It is absolutely correct. April 5th. I have to admit, I didn't know. Someone told me and I got so excited. So yeah, it's a perfect time to talk about caramel.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Your products are sold in the Taste New York market system, and that's the reason that we're having this discussion ourselves. Where else is your product sold?
So I do sell it direct to consumer online on my website, but I do also have a number of retailers, independent shops mostly throughout the Hudson Valley, a little bit beyond. I bleed slightly into Vermont and Connecticut, some surrounding states like that. But probably most of the year about 50 or anywhere between 50 and 80 retailers. It just, some folks are seasonal orchards and things because apples and caramel, they really match well. I do also go to in-person festivals and markets occasionally, and I will sell directly to folks.
And for the scale of your operation, that works.
It does. It does. And it is, I mean, sometimes, like I said, I bring the children to help, which is great. But it is usually my face that people see at my table. Yes.
Do you do your production in your home, in a commercial kitchen, somewhere else?
Somewhere in between, I guess you could say.
Okay.
I do have a 20C license from Ag and Markets, and I use a restaurant kitchen during their off hours. So it's not a shared kitchen in that there are a number of businesses in the kitchen, but I was lucky enough to have a great relationship with someone that, they're not open for lunch. So I can get in there in the morning up until a certain part in the early afternoon and get all of my production done.
So you don't have to do it in your own kitchen anymore.
No, in fact, with the dairy aspect, it is not something that would work for a home license, like certain jam makers. Exactly. Due to the nature of the product I make, it's just something that isn't possible to do with a home license, like a jam, for example.
Cara-Sel is the product that you market, but what else do you do at and around the Ardent Homesteader?
Right. So it really, the name of the business is very true to who I am. We are homesteaders. We have a small number of pigs, cows, chickens. We grow some fruits and vegetables. A lot of it is just for our consumption. But the pork, for example, we do offer for sale locally as shares. So we raise just 6 pigs a year, and it's been really wonderful. We really love knowing where our food comes from, so it's been nice to provide some local folks with that as well.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process of getting your product from the gift idea with your own recipe to something that can go on store shelves?
Absolutely. It was quite an experience, having never been in business for myself, to navigate all of those things. So I reached out to Cornell, specifically the Food Venture Center up in Geneva, and they're really helpful to help navigate all of the ins and outs of, from licensing to something called a scheduled process, which you have to do to make sure your product is food safe, and shelf stable. When I was giving it away, it was not shelf stable. It was a refrigerated item. And so I didn't know, could the dairy, will that be something that could be shelf stable? And so they helped me further develop the recipe so that it didn't have to be a refrigerated product, which made a huge difference.
Is your product shelf stable until it's opened, or is it shelf stable for a period of time even after you've opened it?
Cornell gave me a 2-year unopened shelf life. I do write a 1-year best by on my jars because I do believe it is literally just best by a year as it's fresher. Once you open it, it goes in the fridge, and honestly, I mean, I've never met anyone with the self-control to, see how far it goes, but it really will last for months in your fridge if you happen to forget about it behind the pickles or something.
Right. If it gets tucked away in the back somehow, it will still be okay for a while.
Absolutely.
As you moved from giving your product to friends to doing some farm markets and shows and events, can you tell us a little bit about your marketing experience and how that evolved as you moved from that very small scale to something a little bigger than that? Absolutely. Very local, hyper local scale?
Right. I find that honestly, the best marketing are those in-person events. Being able to sample and have people taste your product, there is no substitute for that. I mean, it's great to have it on a shelf, but I've actually given people samples. They're walking, you give them a sample, they keep walking. I've seen them stop in their tracks, turn around, and come back. So there's just no substitute for actual tasting.
Well, and I suppose especially since you're trying to distinguish your product and the price point of your product from a more generic caramel on a store shelf that anyone could pick up anywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at, the ingredient list on a national brand, it's a lot longer. There are some words that you don't really even know what they are. And sometimes people wonder, well, why is Cara-Sel more expensive? There's less in it, but there's a lot more that goes into it. Maybe not by name, but handcrafted, small batch. The care, attention to detail. There isn't a substitute, in my opinion.
And you remain the only person who's stirring the pot and filling the jars. And
it's true.
Slapping the labels on.
Hand labeled, the dates are handwritten. It's a labor of love for sure.
How did COVID impact your business for the last few years?
It really did quite dramatically, as far as all of the in-person events that had been on my books were canceled. And so for 2 years, I usually do a number of markets a year. I mean, especially in the fall and around the holiday time in the early winter. So 2 years of not having that was a big deal. Online sales did pick up, and retail as well, even though a lot of stores, were closed or had different models, pickup only or online ordering. A lot of the orchards and things still, that had you pick, for example, they actually saw, an increase in traffic. So it was just interesting. I wouldn't say it was in a way better or worse. It was just different.
You had to adjust to the changes over that period of time. And
absolutely.
As we seem to be coming out of the pandemic a bit, are you seeing changes again, or how are you adjusting to that?
That's another good question. So yes, in 2 years, I only did 2 in-person events, and already this year I have, 2 this spring, and then a full slate already showing up for the fall. So that, just sort of getting back to that and trying some new markets that I haven't done before, to sort of, resetting and trying some new things.
But continuing the online sales and that side of your operation as well.
Absolutely. And I do find too, those in-person events do lead to online sales as well. I interact with my customers directly. When I get an online order, people usually get an email from me, how did you find me? Have you tasted it before? And I would say 75% of the people will respond saying, either it's possible sometimes it was a gift, but oh, I saw you at, such and such festival and loved it, and now I want more. You
package your product in 2 jar sizes, is that right?
I do. I have this 6-ounce size is probably the most popular size for like a retail shelf, but I do also have a 12-ounce, a big guy, and around the holidays and as special orders, I do a little mini favor size too.
The 3 sizes at the moment.
Yes.
So far, no 5-gallon containers going off to restaurants or anything like that.
I actually have packaged quarts for restaurants and bakeries before that like to use it in their baked goods or desserts, or I mean, it does work for savory, but I tend to, as far as the behind the scenes, it tends to be a sweet side, yes.
What are your future plans?
That is also a good question. And sometimes that answer changes. But this year, it really is just getting back out into markets and meeting people in person again and offering samples and just hoping to grow, but sort of test my limits of how much can I produce on my own and still grow sustainably. I would like to grow, but still be the one making it. So just sort of to figure out where that limit is.
So for you, bringing on employees to scale up is not your plan?
It is not my plan, but one thing that has happened just very recently, and I mean within the last month, I've realized hiring folks for particular jobs where they are better at them than I am. For example, I had someone help me write copy for my website of something that I just couldn't quite figure out how to get from my brain onto the virtual page. And it was really eye-opening. Wow, you know, I may not have employees, but hiring someone for a specific job, it's really a smart move.
Which then lets you concentrate on the things that you know you're good at and that
exactly.
that you prefer to do.
Well. Absolutely.
Kristin, how does your family feel about you being a caramel manufacturer and marketer and entrepreneur?
I know, you know, I think they're proud that I really put myself out there and went for it. It is funny. It's sort of a double-edged sword, if you will. You know, part of going into business for myself was so I could be here for my family. Also, you know, set my own hours, be flexible. But in turn, there are times when, you know, it's not a 9 to 5, it's a 24-hour thing. My mind is often there, or I'm not present on weekends, or, you know, who knows what. So it's been really interesting, but having them be a part of it and help me, even in small ways, has been really great. Absolutely. And one of my kids, actually, all of my family is present on the label too. This is a picture of our homestead that I'd taken years before being in business, and everybody's in there. Someone's hidden. There's a little secret message in there for the one that isn't physically in the frame, but.
And your husband and how many children are
we have 3
helping
boys.
You out? 3 boys.
Yeah.
And your husband helps out, but he has an off homestead job as well.
He does. So in a way, he has 3 jobs because he has his 9 to 5. He is really the primary for our animals and everything. I mean, he's self-taught, learned everything as he went, and you know, I help, but he's the director, which is the way I like it. And he helps me a ton.
Thank you to Kristin Nelson for enthusiastically sharing the story of the Ardent Homesteader, based in the Hudson Valley community of Arden, New York. For more details, I encourage you to visit the webpage www.ardenthomesteader.com or the Ardent Homesteader's social media sites on Facebook and Instagram. If you are close by, you may also want to contact Kristin and her husband Dave about some of the Ardent Homesteader's other farm-based offerings. The Ardent Homesteader's Cara-Sel salted caramel sauce is available in many of the Taste New York markets across New York State, including the Western New York Welcome Center on Grand Island. It is also available in a growing list of retail and wholesale venues in the region. As Kristin said, online sales options are available under the Shop tab on the webpage. The Ardent Homesteader is another example of how small businesses in New York State are continually adjusting to changes in the economy and markets as they strive to make locally grown, manufactured, or processed and packaged foods, beverages, goods, and services available to consumers throughout the state, region, and beyond.